Welcome back to the Morning Cuppa Podcast with me, Alan. Today, I'm joined by James Carlisle, Transport Manager for Readymix Specialists in London. James and I discuss a variety of topics, including the pros and cons of electric vehicles in decarbonising transport, the importance of mental health for drivers, reasons why you shouldn't burn bridges when you move jobs, and the importance of networking with other transport professionals. Speaking of networking, have you managed to check out the TMC yet? Our digital community of transport managers providing workshops, webinars, mentors and networking? If not, why the hell not? Go check it out now at tmcollective.co.uk. Anyway, let's jump into the show. I say at some point when we start these things, I'll actually have some sort of plan, but it is just chaos. I mean, I must say, that's not bad. 8 minutes before we kind of actually hit record, so that's really, really good. So yeah, thank you, James, for joining me. For everyone else, you haven't been here for the last 8 minutes. James Carlisle has joined me today from Readymix Specialists. They're based in London. He is one of the transport manager there. Kind of extending our conversation that we had with Mark last week around kind of ready mix and concrete. I thought you'd be perfect one to follow up with that. So thank you very much for joining me, James.
Oh, thank you very much for the invite onto the show, Alan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we've been chatting on and off for the last kind of few months. It's nice to finally get a date booked in and get this out. And what a better day! I mean, the sun's shining. I don't have any backing lights for this. I can actually sit by a window and enjoy the sunshine at the same time. So
not me. The blinds are down. The blinds are definitely down.
The skin tone doesn't suit the sun, does it?
Doesn't suit my skin tone. No, not at all.
No, I must say, as I was saying off air, Kiva, one of our team, she's also Irish, and she's off to India in a few days, tomorrow in fact, and yeah, she's kind of back to 100 every 10 minutes sort of thing. So yeah, enough of that stuff. Should we kind of, as obviously you're from Readymix Specialists, you're their transport manager. Kind of keen to get your story, to be honest. Start at the beginning, and for our regular listeners, obviously this is a chance to get to know kind of experienced transport managers and fleet professionals and sort of learn from their life, really. So we'll jump around, I'm sure, but should we start right at the beginning? Do you want to kind of start right where how did you get into transport is probably a better question to ask.
How I got into transport, I think it's the same old story. We sort of fell into transport, really. I moved over to England when I was 16. Initially come over for a 2-week holiday. I didn't go home 21 years later. And
wow.
I'm 21 years, 28 years later, I'm still here.
Yeah.
So, 2-week holiday. When I was 17, my lovely wife fell pregnant, kind of needed a job. I started sweeping the streets of a little village in Hertfordshire called Ware, and that's how I got into the world of waste. Moved on from there into refuse collection. So I was a refuse collector, keen to move on a little bit. Got my car license, progressed to my HGV. I moved to another local authority and I worked as a driver for a few years. Sought pastures new. That didn't work out. I did work for a blue chip company delivering food into the city. It was just, that was chaotic. So
was that multi-drop sort of stuff? It
was multi-drop deliveries, central London food, upstairs, downstairs. It was 15 hour days.
Oh.
And it just took its toll. Wasn't getting a family life and things like that. Yeah. So the pound is great, but family time is a little bit more important. You can't get it back,
can you?
You can't get it back. So I then moved back to my old position. At that time, my then supervisor was leaving the business, and I was asked would I be interested in taking over from him, and I did. I worked as a supervisor for a few years. About 7-8 years.
So was this all within local authority stuff at this point still?
Local authority stuff at this point, and then and then in 2019, training and development at the local authority wasn't great. I couldn't get anywhere up the ladder. Wouldn't invest. So I had worlds of experience. I just didn't have that bit of paper to back
Yeah.
my knowledge and experience up. And a job came up in East London. I went for it.
So what was that role specifically?
That was a compliance manager for another waste company in East London. So I went for the interview, and the experience was there. It just wasn't the
bit of
paper to say you are qualified to do that role. So they were great. They invested in me.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, they gave me the role. So I worked there for a year, and then the good old pandemic came along, which hindered my progress for my CPC. Finally passed. Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt. So that was obviously joined there in 2019. Pandemic hit, obviously early 2020. Had you qualified by that point or not?
I hadn't qualified at that point. The CPCs were cancelled during that period. It was just about to sit the exam.
So literally back in like March, April 2020.
Yeah. I was already all geared for it, and then it was cancelled. And then I was made redundant for all of 1 week. In August that year.
So they invested in you, put you through the course and stuff, and then just made you redundant. Was it? If you don't mind me asking, I mean, we can probably edit this out if you don't want to talk about it. But was it a restructure? Was it just was it overreaction to the pandemic? Because obviously
it was overreaction to the pandemic. Basically, it hit business big in the UK, as everybody knows. But because I didn't have that bit of paper, there was other managers in the business that had more experience than myself with the paper wise. So it was easier to get rid of me. And if I'm honest with you, it was fucking cheaper, because I'd been there less than 2 years, so there was no payout. Yeah. So that's the crux of the story. And then after a week, they realised they kind of made a mistake, because they realised what I'd done within that business. And then they asked me to come back, and they were very they thought I wouldn't come back, but they had to ask the question. But I'd started a project with them, and I wanted to follow it through. And I went back, and I went up onwards and upwards. My boss then left the business. They promoted me, and then I ended up being the head of logistics at that company.
I'm guessing you got your ticket at that point as well.
Got my ticket at that point as well. Sorry. Yeah, got my ticket at that point as well. So, it was just a whirlwind 2.5-3 years because of the pandemic and, how it affected.
So that was within waste?
That was in the world of waste, yeah.
Did it get affected by COVID?
It did, because the city locked down. So
was a lot of the work, was it commercial waste?
It was commercial waste, yeah. It was a commercial company, so it wasn't your local authority and door to door collections. It was big commercial customers, and when the city shut down,
makes sense.
Collections went from 90% down to 15%. So, there was a big period of furloughs and redundancies and all the bits and pieces that came with it. So it did heavily affect that business in particular.
Yeah, because as I say, we did quite well through the pandemic. We didn't have to furlough anyone. Obviously, being a digital company,
exactly.
We positioned quite nicely to kind of cash in to a certain extent. We're able to sort of like grow through the pandemic, which is quite nice. And there's various kind of government schemes that were there to help bounce back loans. Kind of, there was the Kickstart scheme. I think there's one question I wanted to ask is. It's about recruitment. Well, I'll ask it in more detail later, because I think that's quite an interesting topic. But how we managed to sort of use the government Kickstart scheme to hire some junior roles within our company. I want to fuck it. Let's talk about it now. Our audience by now know 100% there is no plan, so we can jump around. We interrupt this program for a special report. Not really, just me again. So you've done your CPC exam. Now, let's prepare for the real world of transport with the TMC Mentor Program. Join a mentor group on the TMC and get weekly calls plus a private group chat with an experienced transport manager to help guide you whilst you make your first steps into the world of transport management. To find out more, go to tmcollective.co.uk and see how a TMC mentor can help you get ahead. Anyway, that's enough from me. Now back to,
me.
So I guess I was kind of going back to how you got into it. You fell into it, needed a job, you kind of fell into it. Obviously, with your role now, you're quite a proactive kind of transport manager and looking to implement lots of cool projects within what you're doing, like within compliance. Does recruitment fall under your kind of driver recruitment? Does that fall under your banner?
Driver recruitment falls under my banner as well, yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is probably an open-ended question to a certain extent, but like, how can we attract more drivers? Not just recruit existing drivers, but what can we do to bring in fresh blood, fresh meat into the industry?
That's a very good question.
Well, I know.
And this is a question that I keep asking myself, because we are now living a world of technology society, and anybody that wants to leave school, they want to go into an office or they want to go into IT. The manual trade it's a dying breed, and it's got to be more attractive. It's got to sort of jazz itself up, per se, to make it more attractive. But what you do to bring more people into our industry, it's a hard one, because you got the older drivers leaving the industry, not taking their CPCs anymore and retiring, and then trying to attract a new driver to our industry is hard. I mean, I think changes in the law for, years ago when I passed my class 1, I had to do class 2, then class 1, but the recent change in legislation to go straight for your class 1, that could be an attraction for drivers to come back
makes it cheaper, I guess, to go through the process.
Yeah.
I think also, I mean, you're in a doubly hard, I mean, your background within waste and obviously now within Readymix is dirty.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's not long distance, nice shiny cabs sitting there and sort of sleep and eat and stuff. It is a very different type of driving, and as our background is construction and kind of waste as well, and it's a hard one to attract people to because it's not easy hours.
It's not easy hours, and it's high pressured, because I've got a load of concrete on the back and that needs to be delivered today. If something goes wrong with it, it goes off. It's, that drum, and then it needs to be broken out. It's you're right. It's such a hard, dirty industry to be in, and how you jazz and sex that up to get the appeal out there to come and work in this industry. I don't know the answer to that.
So what are you doing at the moment? Like, obviously, I know you're about to, or you're going to go through a period of growth, or you have been through a period of growth?
We have been through a period of growth. I mean, we've added, in the last, since I've been here, we've got 9 new vehicles on the fleet. We added 2 more to our O license, and I've just applied for a couple of more vehicles on our O license as well. So we are an ever growing business. So
how do you actually deal with this in reality? Like, you're having to face this at the moment. What you do?
I've got adverts on LinkedIn, Indeed. I do get quite a few drivers because of what we pay where we are. It's making it attractive with the salary, and we do pay a good salary here. So, that's how you attract the driver as well, is it's a bit like a tire fitter. Tire fitters it's another bespoke industry, and they all seem to go round in circles, and they chase the money. But if you pay a driver well, you retain your staff. My turnover staff isn't high. So I keep a lot of my core staff, and I don't lose many, to be fair.
Once you get someone in, they're not going to go anytime soon.
No. So that's one of our tools is keeping them here by paying them well.
I guess we find, I mean, we work within kind of the franchise model. A lot of our customers are kind of franchised to the big boys, and you do see drivers sort of skipping between hauliers, just searching for the extra kind of couple £100 here or there a month. It's like, well, if you pay someone fairly in the first place, or create a culture where salary is not the only thing that brings people in. Like we employ, there's 7 of us in the team, on various kind of levels of stuff, and it's not just about the salary that keeps people, it's the team you're working with and what you're working on as well. And I think, like I say, I know you're working on some really cool things with, like, I know you're going through your fours at the moment, you're looking at Mission Zero, and there's a variety of other projects you've got on the go and stuff. And it's like that proactivity and dynamicism from office staff, I think, helps set a culture of kind of giving a shit, essentially.
Yeah. We're all one team, you know, and that's the thing. You're not just a driver, you're not just a batcher, you're not just a operations manager. We all work for the same business, and we should all have that vision to drive the business forward. Because if the business does well, we all do well. You know? And that's the ethos of it.
How good are your Christmas parties?
Really good, to be fair. Really good.
It's amazing how much that makes a difference, actually. So my wife, I think I've said this on the podcast before, and it's probably been edited out each time, but she works in construction, and she's jumped from like main contractor to property developer, and now back at a main contractor. When she was at the property developer, they paid stupid salaries because they needed to attract the best. They were a very lean team. There was only a couple hundred staff. She works for Mace now. There's 4,000 staff around the globe. It's a big corporate. But the Christmas parties at her previous job were just insane. Like, we'd all get shipped down to the Grand down in Brighton, or the Grove around the corner from us in Watford, like big 5-star hotels. Couple nights in the hotel, full 4-course meal, DJ, free bar. Like, I worked this out, it was probably 150 grand for the weekend for 200 staff, all plus ones, all included. And like, that kept people. Like,
how does that do for morale? The morale, because they know you give a shit about them. You know,
or you give the impression that you give a shit. But the problem is that only works if the rest of the culture is there. And it very quickly, I mean, she very quickly left when the culture broke down. They went through a transition phase. They shifted from being a full property developer through to being a main contractor. So they went, and I'm guessing it's not necessarily the shift of industry of structure, but actually size. They were trying to go to become a big player in the industry, and then the corporate structures come in, and that's something I think. I mean, how big is your fleet at the moment?
I've got a fleet of 26 vehicles at the moment. So,
and I'm guessing you've got kind of goals the company's got goals to expand.
Yeah, we want to expand. We want to get bigger. We want to go into the southeast and, make the business bigger and better. And
I think that's we all want to, well, most people want to get bigger and better and grow as they go. But it's managing that transition from being a small business to being a larger business, and sometimes cultural values can get lost in that transition, and that's where you tend to see a turnover of staff. Where they don't feel like they belong to that little family business anymore. They're a number now rather than a person, and that's something that it's a really hard thing to balance or to maintain through it.
Yeah, and you've got to set that bar, and we're on the cusp of being that small family run business to a full scale operation. So it's keeping what we've got and having that give a shit factor, because we do give a shit, and it's having that open door policy from the director to the operations manager to the transport manager. My phone's always on. The directors and the operations manager, their phones are always on, so we're always on hand if they need guidance, advice, whatever they need.
So the communication is open. People can talk to you, and I know we've had guests in the past talk about like open door policy and stuff. And if drivers got an issue, they can actually come and talk to someone. And it's not just about the job, but about anything.
Anything.
Is obviously something
that's a big thing in this day and age. And
it always has been, but we now talk about it, I think, is the point. But I always try and bring it up on podcasts with people, because I think it's trying to break down that stigma that still surrounds mental health.
I delivered a CPC course this weekend on mental health. And
I saw it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so it's just raising that awareness, and it's it's not just about it's about us as men, because us men,
and we're predominantly male industry.
Yeah, but men in particular don't like to open up about their feelings, exactly. And their own mental health. So it's getting that across to the guys that there's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling down or low, and my door's always open. Come and speak to us.
Have you thought? I mean, obviously, was it Mental Health Awareness Month last month? I think it was May. I think it was
when we spoke a couple of weeks ago.
I think it was. Yeah,
Mental Health Awareness Week.
Yeah, I sometimes get. I mean, I talk about it. I've talked about it before, but like, I do sometimes find that these awareness days and weeks are like, you're just paying lip service. You're just kind of getting on the bandwagon. You get some clicks and likes on Facebook. Make yourself feel good. Pat yourself on the back, but nothing really changes. But saying that, on the flip side, I think it is important to use these days or these weeks, these awareness kind of programs that are run by charities like Mind. And we always do something for Movember, which is obviously men's mental health and obviously testicular and prostate cancer as well, but it touches on mental health as well. And we try and do something around that every year. Like we're doing Casper, one of our, I'm sure we're going to kind of talk about kind of other things in your life. I know we've spoken about it, but Casper, our product manager, his brother passed away a few years ago from an undiagnosed heart condition. So our charity that's close to us as a team, because we're a very small team, is a charity called Cardiac Risk in the Young. And they do a walk every year. So we're doing a walk in a few weeks. It's great fun, actually. It's quite nice to go. I think there's over 1,000 people attend. We all wear T-shirts. We walk around London and sort of generally cause like chaos on the roads. Yeah. But I say we did it last year as a team. We'll do it again this year as a team. It's quite nice to sort of show that support. I mean, I've run marathons and ultra marathons and done various challenges in the past to raise awareness, but also to raise money for it as well. So I know, obviously, I'll say you kind of have quite a lot of charities, or a charity quite close to your heart, don't you? Yourself?
Yeah, I've got a couple of charities quite close to my heart. My youngest daughter, she suffers from a chronic illness called Crohn's disease, another illness called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. That is quite close to my heart. She almost died a couple of years ago because of her illness, and she went to America in November last year with a charity organisation called Dream Flights. Yeah. So it was basically taking kids who've suffered ailments, and that's anybody from it's life debilitating conditions, and just taking them away to be kids for 7 days, I think they went for. So they went to Disneyland in Florida, swam with dolphins, went through all the parks, Harry Potter World. Yeah. But it was all expenses paid, and it's something I could never give that experience to my daughter, but also for my wife as well, and my daughter, because of the pandemic. It helped them both mentally, talking about your mental health. Yeah. For 2 years, my daughter, for a year, she wasn't allowed outside the front door. Yeah, because
I'm guessing she was shielding part of that.
She was shielding, yeah. And my wife didn't either. So that affected their mental health. And they were so close. And every time my daughter went out, my wife was like fretting, and her mental health was heavily affected by it. So when she went to America, I was like, I've got to do something for my wife, because I know she's going to be walking up and down the living room. So it was her 40th birthday in October. So I flew her out to Turkey for a week and let her.
Did you go with her, or just send her off alone?
I obviously went with her for the week, but
just want to clarify. Like, happy birthday! Off you go.
Off you go. Yeah, we went out to Turkey for the week because it get her away from the same four walls, and that way, she could relax. But Dream Flight UK, absolutely amazing. Dream Flight USA, the stuff they do for them children is amazing. So,
do you do anything for kind of the kind of Crohn's and IDS specifically? Are there charities that you support there as well?
She's under Edinburgh Hospital in Cambridgeshire. Myself and my daughter are going to be doing a skydive next year, and that's going to be specifically for the gastroenterology and pediatric clinic at Edinburgh Hospital, because that's a separate charity as well. So we're going to be doing a skydive next year for that. But for Dream Flight, myself and, I think future son-in-law, I would say, are going to do London to Brighton on a bike next year as well. So I'm going to be doing some training for that. So I just want to give back what they give to us as a family. And what they've done for my daughter has just been absolutely tremendous, you know.
You're not thought to run a marathon then?
I'm bordering on 40. There's no way I'm running a marathon.
No excuse. You're gonna cycle 100 kilometers London to Brighton. You can definitely run a marathon.
No, I'm fundamentally lazy, Alan.
There is that, yeah. Back in the day when I used to have other jobs that I used to do. I used to cover events, and I used to as a medic. I'd cover London to Brighton ultramarathon as well, and that's good. That's good fun. It's a nice route.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
It's been done a few times. Yeah, I've heard it's pretty, and then there's one particular hill that's really hard or something. So we'll see.
It's just an upwards flat bit. It's not a big deal. It's not hard. Hills are fine.
Yeah. Listen, I've got to get my training in for it.
Yeah.
You know, so
you got a bike.
I do have a bike,
okay,
so
that step one ticked. You've done that.
That's It's actually getting the time to go out on a bike and do some training.
Well, I know you start like crazy early, because don't you? You don't live local to where you work. You got a bit of a drive every morning, haven't you?
Yeah, so I live in Stevenage and work in South London, Rainham. So I start at 6 o'clock most mornings, and depending on my workload, or because I've got massive OCD, Alan, so I've got to have things done in certain ways, and it's got to be done just so before I leave. So that's just how I roll with it. You know, I've got a to-do book as well, so you know, every day I'm ticking off what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So
and you never get to the end of it, do you?
You never get to the end of it, because you keep adding to it, because you keep finding things. So
I find I have a book as well for that very reason. It's just like I've tried different digital tools, tried using kind of like to-do lists and apps and stuff, but I quite like just I walk around my notebook.
A lovely pen.
I run a technology company, and I still like pen and paper. All our brainstorms happen pen and paper, post-it notes.
There you go.
It's the way it is. I mean, I'm sitting here. I mean, the way I'm set up here, I've got laptop for that. My phone's over there. I've got my tablet on there on the stand. So I've got all these screens around me. Yeah. But it's still pen and paper that I'm writing notes as we're talking. It's still the way I'm talking.
It's same as me. You know, I've got 3 screens sitting in front of me, and my paper and my table is just scattered in post-it notes. This is what I've got to do. It's just little reminders.
Yeah, it's just the way the brain works, isn't it? So
yeah.
So let's go back to your story. I think we've you got up to, was it logistics director, logistics manager? That was the way.
No, head of logistics.
Head of logistics. That was it. Yeah. Sorry, head of logistics at the other firm. What happened next?
We had a few people leave the business. We took a sales lady down from our customer service floor, and in 9 months I managed to get her manager CPC.
Nice.
She passed her manager CPC, obviously, but the company wouldn't pay what the going rate first should have done. Yeah, really, and that they were like, you should be beholden to us because we paid for your CPC. You know, you want me to go on your O license? It's my name going on that O license. No, it's not just the director; it's my name. Yeah. If I've got to go to public inquiry, you know, you have to be fair with that. So she left the business. My training manager, he retired. My office manager, he was seconded by another big firm in the city. And we just couldn't recruit because they weren't paying what was the going rate, what I would think the going rate would be. And I just kept on putting on and on and on. And it just got to a point where I'd had enough personally myself, because it was just too stressful, too many too many people to answer to. And it was like, you pulled from pillar to post. So at that point, I'd made my mind up. I was supposed to go for another company, another rival of theirs. I was due to start with them, and I got a call from Readymix, and we're like, you got to come talk to us. And I was like, no, I'm a man of my word. I've got a contract here. No, you need to come and talk to us. Finally, agreed to come and speak to them, spoke to them. And I just liked the project that they put in front of me. And I had to let my ex-boss down gently, because he was an ex-boss of mine as well, and wanted me to come and work for him. But he was okay about it. He was, you got to do what's right for you and your family. Always here if you need guidance, support. I've always left any business. I've always left in the right way, and
I think it's important to not burn bridges.
Yeah.
It's probably why I've never had a real job, because I wouldn't be able to do that. I've always worked for myself, and the idea of working in within a hierarchy and a structure is something that I struggle with. I like the free flowing nature of running a startup. It's fun. But it's important, I think, not to burn bridges.
Well, especially with the industries we work in,
it's small.
It's small industry, so you leave in the right way, and that's what I've done. And then I've come here and started a new project here. It's a big project, but I will. So what do you want to outline? Do you want to outline what the projects are? Is something you can talk on air, or is this all super secret? No, it's not super secret. Obviously we've got a load of new mixers coming now as well. It's about updating the fleet, safety, compliance, putting new policies, procedures in place. Just before we came on air, I actually spoke to, who did I speak? Mark. I spoke to Mark from Mintrain, about, proper accredited training for my drivers. I want to put processes in place so it protects the drivers and they're going out safe and compliant. Internal, is protecting people on the street, really. So I'm not really knowledgeable on mixers. I'm a great transport manager. I know all the laws and the policies, procedures, but how a mixer works, I'm not the strongest, so I have to have training on that as well. I'd source it, but also I'm one of these people that has to know. When I was a driver, if something went wrong on the vehicle, I'd be standing watching the engineer what he was doing.
I'm a nightmare when my car breaks down. I got my head under the hood as well, looking at what they're doing. I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I like. It's like a bit of a segue. I've got a camper van. I say camper van. It's an 8-seater car that's been converted. In 1983, Toyota Space Cruiser. Ugliest vehicle owns man. I love it. Massive kind of sentimental reasons, which I won't go into. But the crankshaft went about 4 years ago, and it's just sort of sat outside my house and in a friend's garage for 4 years. And my uncle-in-law, it turns out I wasn't aware of this, but he was an ex-HGV mechanic. Like, cool. Well, that's helpful. And he now tinkers with classic cars, so he offered to fix it up for me. So I got a call literally last Saturday saying he's got it running. We bought a second engine, and he was like, yeah, we'll do a straight swap. It wasn't a straight swap, nothing simple in a vehicle. But he said he spent 49 hours on it so far, is how much time he spent in it. And luckily, he said, well, you're lucky your family, because it would cost you an arm and a leg otherwise. Like, yeah, appreciate it. I appreciate the sentiment. But initially, he was like, oh, I've got it running. Here's a photo. I was like, oh, I didn't know you'd started. He was doing it in between his other projects. I was like, I really wanted to come and watch or help, because I was like, I don't know the second anything about the inside of a combustion engine. And I'm like, it would have been a chance to really kind of get to grips of how these things actually work. But
you got to balance that up with 49 hours.
Exactly. He said he did say it's like if you'd been here, it would have been like more than like 99 hours, because I'm having to like show you and fix your fuck ups and everything. And it was like sometimes you're staring at it and going, I don't know. Like a lot of it was cleaning. Like it was just 40 years worth of grub and grime you got to get out to put it on. So that was yeah, in terms of, I think the point was I like learning as well, and I like knowing stuff. So yeah, I'm obviously working with. I know you only had an initial conversation with Mark at Mintrain, but I think that'll be a really good thing. I know he's trying to do some really good things within the Readymix sort of industry.
Yeah, listening to your podcast from last week, really interesting podcast, and keen to work with Mark and get things developed my end, to ensure that my drivers have got the tools that they need and the knowledge that they need to go out there and know what they're doing, basically. So that's another project, and then earned recognition. I want to get the earned recognition status as well.
Have you spoken to Phil about that?
I haven't spoken to Phil about that yet. I want to get my gold through, because part of you've got to have obviously an audit every couple of years with your earned recognition and fours. So don't want them to be aligned together. I'm sort of thinking strategically. I want to get the four.
Or do you want them aligned together, because then you just do it all in one go, like just one chunk of work?
No, but you want to respite before you've got to hit, because with fours you've got several different audits throughout the year, so I'm spacing them all.
Have you got your gold yet? Then have you submitted your gold?
I'm about a couple of days away from pushing the submit button. I'm making sure that all my guys have got their SUDs and their low cities. Yeah. So I've got to get up to that benchmark, but all the other work has been done in the background. So we can push submit. So, and then once that's done, it'll be the earned recognition and the bolt-on concrete.
I guess it's kind of timed right, isn't it? Because obviously with the earned recognition, the mini mix or concrete mixer bolt-on, it's a good addition to the project based on what you're doing anyway. So it'd be. I think you're going to be talking to Mark quite a lot, I think.
I think I will be talking to Mark quite a lot from the conversation I had with him this afternoon.
I've had a couple, since I've recorded the episode, I've had a couple of conversations with him of kind of what we're going to do together. Because there's lots of synergies between what we do. So it's he's got a really interesting view on how the industry should be run, or how it's not being run particularly effectively. And it's refreshing to not have, like, sometimes within organisations you get a bunch of yes men, people just agreeing, towing the party line, just spouting what they're meant to say, whereas Mark is not one of those people.
No, he's definitely not one of those people. No, he's definitely not one of those people.
I say he was very, very restrained on the episode. I think he was somewhat distracted. He was going on to something else afterwards. So but it's refreshing to hear, though. You don't want to just hear the status quo. You want to hear where our wrongdoings, or where our failures in the industry are. It should be more of a collaboration. Yes, we're 100%. All separate businesses, but we should all be working together. And it's kind of and it's why I really enjoy doing this podcast, because I get to talk to a load of cool people, and there's no kind of ulterior motive here. It's just chatting and seeing what comes out. Like, as I say, you're talking to Mark now because you listened to the podcast last week, and I talked to Mark. I can't remember how I came across it. I think it was maybe something to do with earned recognition, I think, or maybe it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like all these networking things happen, and you kind of, it's that collaboration comes by being open and not being kind of closed door on these sorts of things. So I think it's really important that.
Yeah, that is really important, and it should be. It should be that way, It shouldn't be a closed door policy. It should be, let's work together. Let's get it right.
Yeah, because ultimately, we want to try and improve standards on the road. That's kind of what we're all driven by.
We are driven by that, that the standards on the roads do need to get better, and that's something we do look at. And as I say, one of the projects is about wheeling up policies, procedures, retox procedures, and making sure, because that is a big thing at the moment as well.
And it's not just about, I mean, having a policy and procedure is important, but it's actually implementing it across the fleet.
It's implementing
and
across
understanding it, and sort of converting those things to toolbox talks. And I mean, I was talking to someone around infringements, driver infringements, infringements, but also telematic data, so looking at kind of harsh braking and acceleration and stuff. So looking at kind of this digital data that we collect on drivers while they're driving, and using that data to influence behavioural change. to reduce the likelihood of incidents and accidents, incidents and collisions, on the road, and to a certain extent gamifying it, sort of like rewarding people for good driver kind of habits and behavior. Yeah. So it doesn't have to just be, here's a policy, stick it on his face, sign it, off you go. It can be, you can actually kind of get people involved.
It is something that we do. We look at that sort of data, and we identify where drivers are going wrong over a period of time, and then we send them out with a driver trainer to give them better practices and to assess his driving, not to criticize it, but to change some of these bad habits. Yeah, to coach rather than criticize.
Yeah, I got off the phone with someone else, completely separate from the podcast actually, and he's quite a large organisation, got 7 depots, nothing to do with aggregate, nothing to do with tippers, mixers, nothing like that. It's all completely separate industry, but they've just implemented a driver trainer program, so they've now got driver trainers at every one of their depots, and their full-time job is to go out and not just assess new drivers, but also to support and coach existing drivers. And I think that proactivity is really, really, really important.
100%. We had it where, with my previous post, we had a driver trainer for that very reason. It's having that proactive approach and going out and not just assessing, but with the new and old drivers.
Sometimes it's the older drivers that need a more gentle, careful hand holding, careful handling, not hand holding. In terms of, they think they know what's best, and sometimes they need to be gently coaxed into maybe changing behaviour to be what is more appropriate. And that's something
you've said that very delicately there, Alan, haven't you? The older driver thinks they know best, and trying to retrain an old driver it is quite difficult, because before CPC, I drove for 30 years before CPC. What do I need this bit of paper for now?
Yeah. I think there was something you said. I mean, I know you, because you deliver all the CPC in house, don't you? You're part of that sort of program. You don't see CPC as a training course; you see it as a reminder and reinforcement. I think you said that last time we spoke. I think that's really important to make that shift in mentality. It's, if you as the trainer and the delegates all understand, it's not about teaching you new stuff. It is about reinforcing and revisiting and kind of reinforcing the point so that they know it's an important thing to be aware of.
Well, that's one of the biggest things, is reinforcing that point. But when us drivers, when I got my HGV, we were never told, if you infringe too many times, if you do this, you could end up in front of a traffic commissioner. Your license, it's a vocational license. I was never told that as a driver. And reinforcing that to my drivers, you could stand in front of a traffic commissioner and they can revoke your license for 3 months and fine you for X, Y, Z. It's not a scare tactic. It's a fact. You're a professional driver and you should drive as such in a professional manner. We can help coach you and, give you the tools that you need, but ultimately you're out there in control of that steering wheel. Yeah. So and that's the message that I try and get across to my drivers.
Yeah. So apart from obviously own recognition and Falls Gold and whatever goes with Mintrain and the assessment framework and stuff that they're working on, what other kind of projects are in the pipeline that you can talk about?
There's not much more I can talk about. On air about what the future holds for the business and what direction we're going. Other than the CPC training, DVS, earned recognition, fours. We're looking at new systems for direct vision standards as well, because there's a review of that at the moment. So we're looking at changing, getting new systems in to be ahead of the game, basically, because the sensors at the front and on the offside of the vehicle, I think they're pretty crucial to the vehicle as well. It's giving the driver every chance to see a vulnerable road user. So that's another thing we're looking at. So I've got a whole ream of stuff that I'm looking at to make sure that we're where we need to be.
I think it's important, especially if there are kind of expansion plans, that you need to get it right at this stage before you expand and have to retrofit or retrospectively sort systems and processes in place. So yeah.
It's pretty expensive for the business, so we want to try and get ahead of that. Our business, we own all our fleet, we don't lease it. So it's something we look to do before we bring the vehicle here on site, and having all them safety systems put on before they go onto London's roads. I
guess, and obviously with any expansion plans you've got, it's getting those deals in place now so that when you look to expand, you've got systems in place to cope with that expansion, because say it's...
Yeah, and then you've got the lead times on new trucks as well, so it's that's a big one, I am looking at electric on the fleet as well, but that's at very early stages because of the expense side of it as well. But I think longer term, I think it's going to be hydrogen powered. Is
that your opinion on it?
Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, I personally think electric is a stopgap before hydrogen, hydro-powered vehicles, because I can't see that being sustainable on HGVs.
I don't. I mean, there's when I talk about kind of the decarbonisation of transport, I don't have any particular opinions because I'm not an expert. I can't have an opinion because I fucking know. I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a designer. I don't see that sort of side of it. But I do start seeing, and it's such a polarizing topic as well. Everyone has such strong opinions about it, and to me, that's just not helpful to have dialogue. Like, at one point I was like, yeah, pro-electric. Electric's fantastic. There's no emissions. But then I read this article in The Guardian just this week, in fact, by Rowan Atkinson, of all people, Mr. Bean. He wrote, he's a very intelligent man. I think he did engineering at uni. He's got he knows his stuff, amongst other things of comedy and stuff. But he sort of said, we focus so much on what comes out the back of the vehicle as the only metric for decarbonisation, that you don't look ahead and around the production of the vehicle and the destruction of the vehicle at the end of its life as well, and the lifespan of a vehicle. I mean, he was talking about cars specifically, but I drive an old car. I've got an 18-year-old Honda Jazz. Nothing to be kind of flashy about. It gets you from A to B. Yes, it emits kind of emissions at the exhaust, but I've had that car for 3 years, and it will probably keep going for another 3. I also know who owned it beforehand. It's been looked after. It's had an incredibly long life, and it's still going to go for an incredibly long amount of time after I'm finished with it. And that's far better for kind of emissions and stuff, even though it is still technically emitting stuff out the exhaust. So I don't really know what the answer is. I think it's an interesting kind of thing to look at in terms of kind of how we put it into the commercial space, because I think ignoring the logistical factors of charging points and refilling points and all that sort of stuff, I think you need to look at what is actually the most sustainable option, and also, and as well as looking at how it actually operates on the roads and how we can use it and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot. It's still, unfortunately, still very early doors, isn't it, in this?
It is very, very early doors. I mean, my previous job, we did source, and we did bring in a electric dust cart, but that was the best part of £500,000.
Yeah,
for one vehicle, and that was a fleet of 53 vehicles. How is that sustainable for a business?
Yeah. Sustainability is an all-encompassing term. It doesn't just mean reducing your emissions. There's a whole load about creating kind of ethical businesses. And if you've got 25 million to spunk on 50 vehicles, it's just that's just not, you should be paying your drivers more, essentially.
Exactly. But then the charging point for each vehicle's, I think, to charge it within 3 hours was something stupid like 180 grand.
Yeah.
It's just astronomical amounts of money for that vehicle to only do 108 miles.
Yeah.
Before it needs charging again. So for the logistics industry, batteries ain't the way to go.
No.
So that's just my personal view.
I think, I went to Taiwan for my honeymoon 6 years ago, and they have a fantastic system with scooters. So they got mopeds. It's a standard, obviously, Southeast Asian kind of mode of transport is the moped, and Taiwan being very forward thinking, all their mopeds are electric. But from what I can tell, what I could gather is you had massive charging points. So they're massive substations. I say massive, like 2 or 3 cars sort of size stacked on top of each other. And the batteries were about the size of a car battery. Like, they weren't massive. They were nice, like, round. They were like big, chunky handle, and they went in like a remote control car kind of battery. You just clunked in, and you could literally, when you run out, I'm assuming you pay a subscription fee, and you just chuck it in this charger and just take the next one.
Okay,
and so you never have to charge, because you've always, and you just pay to be part of it.
So it's an exchange policy, yeah.
And obviously what it does is a massive store of energy, because obviously you've got all these batteries. It's a fantastic way of storing energy rather than relying on other storage kind of facilities and getting that peaks and troughs and use of electricity and stuff. I've always kind of wondered whether that would work within the HGV space, whether there's a way of building a vehicle that has a battery that can decouple and can move out and you replace it, rather than have to charge for 3 hours or whatever, actually be able to like decouple and put a new one in. But again, even if all that technology worked, you have to have every manufacturer to feed into the same thing to interchange and stuff, because obviously that's part of the problem. But also, what is the lifespan of a battery?
It's about 7 years, I believe. I think between 7 and 10 years on these things.
And all those materials that go into making those batteries aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, and you're talking, they're not going anywhere. You can't recycle them. Well, you can recycle them. You know, there's companies out there that'll put them in the fields and put solar panels on them, and you can use that as like a charging station again. But it's just, I don't think it's sustainable. You know, these batteries in large vehicles, I don't personally think it's sustainable.
And I just one other thing I read this week, which is completely irrelevant to transport, but like we think, wind power, that must be like really sustainable. Those blades have a lifespan. They can't be recycled.
It's unbelievable.
So
there must be a way.
So there's companies out there now that are looking to a way of upcycling and turn them into bus shelters, like cut them in half, and there's bus shelters and art installations and things like that. But it's just like, even things like that, nothing is totally green. And I think it's important to kind of look beyond the argument and beyond the headlines and actually do your own due diligence and research. But this wasn't meant to be a chat about kind of sustainability, but it's turned into one, hasn't it?
It has.
I'll be interested to see kind of where you guys go down that route. So we'll stay in touch regarding that at the very least.
Definitely.
I guess there's one last question I did want to ask, which I didn't prep you for. So if you want to tell me to bugger off, you can do. But I normally ask guests, like, what's one piece of advice you would give a new and aspiring TM as they're either joining or have joined and looking to navigate the start of their careers?
I would say reach out to other transport managers within the industry. Do a lot of networking. There's lots of shows on throughout the year where you can get good contacts. Also use LinkedIn. It's a great tool. It's probably the greatest tool out there.
Except the Transport Managers Collective that obviously we launched recently.
Okay, Alan, except LinkedIn's a great tool for that. Yeah. You know, I've been very, very privileged, wherever I've worked, my former transport managers, I've stayed friends with them. You know, they haven't just been colleagues, they've turned into kind of lifelong friends as well. So it's having that network around you, and don't be afraid to ask a question, because no question's a stupid question.
It's such a hard one, because I totally and 100% agree with you. Problem is Facebook groups don't agree with you.
No, they don't. But also, you've got the FTA out there. You've got the RHA. There's training schools out there. If you don't want to ask, Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups or other transport managers, reach out to them, because they will have the answer.
It's one of the reasons. I mean, genuine. I know we've spoken off air about this, and it looks like I've teed you up to say this to let me talk about this, but it totally wasn't planned. Obviously, our mentor program that we launched recently is exactly that. It's allowing people to not just talk to other TMs, but talk to other experienced TMs. I think that's the difference. Is you can get into a bit of an echo chamber if you kind of sit in these small groups, whereas if you can reach out to people outside your network and build a relationship with someone that's experienced, who knows their stuff, who then themselves have also their own network, I think it's something you can really get value from. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Networking, I think, is the take home message, I think, from that. Are you going to RTX in a few weeks?
I'm not, unfortunately. I'm taking a well-earned break from work.
Fair enough. Well, enjoy the break.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it. I think and again, we're on my clock at 53 minutes in, saying we're going to wrap up. And I think if we can wrap up in the next 3 or 4 minutes, we've done a good job, I think. So, yeah, I mean, thank you very much for coming on the show, really, James. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and finally getting a date set was been fantastic. So,
yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. It's been really good to chat and get your views and opinions on things and talk about the Transport Managers Collective and, sustainability.
I'm not paying you for that, by the way.
Yeah, I know you're not. But, I know you're not, but it is a really good bit of kit and software and support network out there. So any support for transport managers out there is good support, and that's that's what I take away from what you're doing.
It's one of the reasons we do this podcast, is to kind of talk to people like yourself and let you share your experiences with kind of our audience, so that they can learn from what you've been through and sort of things you've seen and dealt with, and why you're doing certain things. And it's an important chance to sort of learn from others, because you can't possibly experience everything yourself. So learning from other people's mistakes is a valuable kind of thing to do.
We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. It's how we learn from that mistake and how we grow from it. And that's what using our network and we grow as people when we do that. Exactly.
Well, I think we'll call it a day there. Thank you very much, James, for joining me. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch regarding kind of what you're doing with all your projects. And I want to know what your projects are off air, because I'm just nosy. I'll press stop and then we can talk. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. Yeah, if anyone wants to get hold of James, I'm sure we'll put links to your LinkedIn. And obviously, if anyone wants to come work with Readymix, I know you're a Readymix specialist. I know you're obviously always recruiting.
Yes, always recruiting.
We'll put a link to. Have you got a website?
We do have a website.
I'm sure we'll put it somewhere in the description below so people can access it. So yeah, once again, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you to James for joining me this week, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Morning Cuppa Podcast. If you like this week's show, be sure to go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. That will help us get in front of even more transport professionals just like you. As always, I do love chatting to other transport professionals, so go ahead and find me on LinkedIn or Instagram using the links in the description. That's all from me. Once again, thanks for listening to the show. I've been Alan, and this has been the Morning Cuppa Podcast.